Aloha and welcome to our final episode in the lower body series. Today we're going to be working through a more restorative sequence. It's based on a yin style practice. So what that means is that we're going to be holding just two postures for anywhere from 3 to 5 minutes at a time. And this is going to be a challenge because it's going to feel really slow. It's going to feel like we're not doing very much, but that is also part of the practice, is to take the time and actually commit to being present and surrendering to the moment and allowing the practice to just move the body in the way that it needs to without us actively doing anything extra. So if you have the ability to practice in a space where you can relax, whether that be outside the pool deck, just kind of somewhere away from the noise and the chaos, or somewhere at home, just finding a little corner to tuck away in, that would be super ideal for these practices, as we do really want to allow our body and our mind to fully relax and allow the parasympathetic nervous system to do its thing. And that system is in charge for our rest and digest, is what we call it. And so start thinking about that not only in terms of like physically in our body resting and digesting, but also in terms of training, right? Being able to digest what we just did at practice, kind of let that integrate into the system and be ready to go for the next one. As always, options for each of the postures. Take what you need, take what your body allows, and adjust however necessary to suit your needs for the week. So let's get started. So for these more restorative practices, I highly recommend having some props nearby. If you have pillows, blankets, cushions, towels, whatever is available to just help support the body as we move through some of these postures. Again, the purpose of these more restorative ones is not to pull and force ourselves into any sort of stretch, but rather just allow the body to fall and use the breath to be what drives that relaxation and allow the body to start to lengthen. So the more we can prop and support that process to happen, the more we can allow the mind as well as the body to relax and really deepen into the practice and get the most out of it. So today, for starting off, let's go ahead and just find an easy seat wherever you are. And we're just going to start to tune into the breath, because we really want to be mindful of our breathing as we work through these postures. So just in a nice, easy seat, crisscross. If that's not available for your knees or that feels like a little bit of a strain, just come onto the knees, sitting back onto the heels, just somewhere where you can find that length from the tailbone to the crown of the head of the spine. And we're just going to start to tune into the breathing. So closing down the eyes, shutting out the external landscape, starting to tune in to the internal landscape and what's happening inside the body. Without changing anything with the breath, just start to take note as how the breath feels as it enters the body through the nose. And notice how the body feels as the breath starts to leave, exhale out the nose. Next inhale, just being mindful of where the breath goes as it enters the body. And exhale, where does that breath leave from as it exits the body? One more round of breath, starting to lengthen on the inhales. Exhale, allow the shoulders to drop, let the belly soften. Full mind, full body, release. Coming into this moment, there's nowhere else we need to be, nothing else we need to be doing. You're just here, we're just now. From here, we'll move into our first forward fold. Option to keep the eyes closed if you want, just staying in with the breath, staying tuned into that internal landscape. We'll bring the legs out long in front of us, finding a comfortable seat on our hip bones, and start to ground down and just notice the connection. Feel the support of the earth below us through the backside of our legs, all the way down into the heels. Staying with the breath. We slowly start to lift our breath up out of the hips on the inhale. Feel the lengthen around the waist. And on the exhale, we start to hinge and fold forward. And again, on this, we're just trying to find a nice, easy, comfortable stretch through the back of the legs. Just allowing our body to fall wherever it wants to land today. So head is nice and heavy. allow for a generous round of the spine on this. Again, we're not trying to flatten, we're not trying to pull anything. We're just allowing ourselves to fall heavy, sinking down into the pillow or the cushion. If you're already sinking down into your knees, go for it. But just nice and control, steady with the breath. We slowly start to surrender to the posture. Allow the arms to be heavy. Allow the head to be heavy. And just start to sink down through the back of the legs. Draw that breath in to wherever you feel areas of tightness or tension. Intentionally and mindfully, just visualizing those spaces, start to release, smoothing them out with the breath, just like you're painting over them with a paintbrush. Starting to smooth them out. Exhale, release, and let all that tension out of the system. Let it all go with the breath. Staying with the breath, using the breath, seeing if you can just start to sink down a little bit deeper. Starting to deepen the pose, deepen your connection to the internal belly breath. Exhale, release, find length, melting down into the earth. Be aware of the space around your shoulders. Are you holding anything? Are you hunching? Try to release, draw the shoulders away with the breath. If there's any tightness through the back of the legs, start to draw the breath into those spaces and imagine that tightness leaving through the base of the feet. Exhale, push it all out. Start to lengthen the exhales. See if you can hold the exhale for a count of 7. Slow, controlled. Just letting out a bit of air at a time. Trusting that as the inhale comes, the air is traveling, the breath is moving wherever your body needs it to go. As you start to adjust to wherever you are, you can start to sink down a little bit further, maybe removing some of those blocks or those cushions. And we just start to surrender and fold even more. If you're finding a little bit of strain in those back of the knees, go ahead and put a rolled up towel or a little blanket to keep a little bit more of the knee bend, to keep some of that pressure out of the low back, and allow yourself to really just deepen the pose in a healthy way that's going to be good for the body. We're here for 1 more minute. Stay with the breath. If the mind starts to wander, that's okay. Just gently bring it back into the breath. Staying true to the method. Allowing yourself to be present where you are right now. Two more rounds of breath, making the longest exhales yet. Fully release. And slowly start to walk your hands back towards the hips, rounding, coming up 1 vertebra at a time, all the way into a seat. Removing any blankets under the knees, any cushions for support underneath the hips, any pillows or bolsters that you have on your knees. And we'll slowly just come down onto the mat, To neutralize out the spine, bring those knees into the chest. Give yourself a tight squeeze. Need one round of breath to feel that pressure, that feedback of the belly moving up into the thighs. Deep, full breath, exhale, release and let that go. Good. From here, slowly make your way up into a seat. You can roll onto one side and then slowly come up. And for this next pose, we're going to go into what we call saddle pose. So again, meet yourself where you're at. If you have less flexible knees, go ahead and grab a cushion or a bolster to put under the tailbone. But essentially, we're going to bring, almost like a breaststroke kick, bring the heels up beside the hips, on either side. And then we're going to slowly start to melt back and open up. We're going for a counter pose. So we're just folded forward. Now we want to start to open up and release some of that. So wherever you are, again, if you need a little bit more support, this is not available for your knees. You can go ahead and just keep the legs out straight in front of you, putting a bolster or something underneath your low back. Really, the important part of the pose here is that we start to open up through the front of the hip flexors and that we start to find length through the top of the legs and open up through the chest at the same time. But a really good counter for a lot of kicking, a lot of breaststroke stretch, to go ahead and have those ankles and those knees and start to build up that flexibility and release some of those fascia lines along the front side of the legs. So wherever you are, just start to lay back onto the cushions and the blankets. Flip. And we come into saddle pose. So again, we're here for about 3 minutes, nice and gently, letting your head hang wherever it wants to. Nice and supported. Arms come out long by the sides. Take a second to get yourself set up. And however is going to feel the most restorative again. So there's no pull, there's no tension. We're not holding anything for these poses. We really want to let our body just fully relax into it. So take the time to set up however you need. When you feel like you get there, we'll start to close down the eyes and tune into the breath again. So probably be some pull up and through the hip flexors. So that's exactly where we want to start to channel in that breath. Bringing space, smoothing out any tension, any tightness. Using the inhales. Release with the exhale. Start to lengthen out, even just if it's in your mind's eye, from the knees to the hips. So just imagine that space starting to lengthen. Using the breath, feel the knees start to fall away from you. And notice how that creates some more space. Even if it's just subtle, even if it's just imaginary, it'll start to create some space through the front of the hips. Exhale, release. Now just bringing in the awareness to the area around the chest. Arms are nice and heavy on the mat. It can be overhead to the sides, down closer to your legs, whatever feels comfortable for you. Just let your body fall where it wants to. And allow the back of your hands, your forearms, the elbows, the back of the arms to fully relax. Heavy into the ground, heavy through the ground. And slightly pulling or drawing those wrists and the hands away from the body. You can start to find some length and some more opening through the front of the chest. Just breathe into that space. mind starts to wander, just allow the thoughts to be like a cloud. Let it go, let it pass. Without judgment, without starting to attach a narrative, without attaching emotion or judgment for having the thoughts, just let it go. Return back into the body. Notice what's happening around the hips. Notice what's happening up through the length of the spine. Take note of how the chest feels as the inhale starts to fill the space around your heart center. And feel that deep sense of peace as we fully release on the exhale, allowing ourselves to be heavy and melt down into the support of the cushions, into the support of the mat and the ground below. We're here for just a few more moments. Start to lengthen the exhales. Allow the inhales once again to start to smooth out any spaces of tension, any knots, any tightness, anywhere we're holding on. And maybe it's the areas less obvious. What's happening around the jaw? Are you holding anything around your brow? Is there anything around your temples that you can let go? You feel the top of the mouth start to expand. When you're ready, slowly, trying to keep the eyes closed here, we'll make our way back up into a seat, coming up onto your elbows, to your palms. Gently press yourself up. Bring those knees into touch. We go for final rest in child's pose. Again, once again, folding forward, feeling that connection down into the earth, through the forehead, through the shins, through the top of the arms. Just feel the support. And allow the mind and allow the body to fully release. Let go. In your own time, and slowly come all the way back up to a seat, finishing just how we started. Tuning in again to 3 rounds of breath, just noticing any difference in the mind, noticing any difference in the body, in the breath, in the flow of energy. From now, from the beginning of practice, without attaching narrative, judgment, emotion, just notice. Exhale, let it go. From here, you can blink open the eyes, come back into the space. Thank you all for taking the time to dedicate yourself to the practice. Like I said, I know sometimes these postures can feel even more challenging because we're not actively doing anything, but we're allowing our body to do a lot more than we realize. So give yourself credit for showing up, for taking the time to really slow down. And if you ever feel like you don't have time to hold a posture for 5 minutes, that is all the more reason to do so. Make sure that you give yourself 15 to get that time in for yourself. That's all we have for today. We'll be back next week, starting with our activation series once again, moving up into the hips. So thank you, enjoy the rest of the week, and be well. Namaste.